Could we rise, please? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please, Ms. Mason.
Mrs. Fryrick? Here. Mr. Posnow?
Here.
Mr. Robinson?
Here.
Mr. Sanders?
Here.
Mr. Scalette?
Here.
Mrs. Schroeder?
Here.
Mr. Sears?
Here.
Mr. Toman?
Here.
Mr. Watts?
Thank you. Reminder to please silence your cell phones during the meeting. And this is your first opportunity for public comment. All comments and questions will be addressed to the President. Board and staff members will not normally respond to questions or comments during the meeting unless recognized by the President for this purpose. Comments will be limited at the discretion of the President to 5 minutes or less. Do I have any takers?
Jamie Evans, 138 Lisa Lane. I speak on behalf of the YSCA tonight. I know you have before you a motion to turn our health room assistant into a certified school nurse position. I would encourage you to vote yes on that tonight. The demands on health needs continues to increase. These ladies that sit behind me work so hard so that we can focus on our students. Their jobs have changed from perhaps when you were in school. The demands, like I said, are increasing, and we need this fourth position to help with the safety of our students and the support of our staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Other? Thank you. You have the regular monthly meeting of August 18th linked online. Do we have any changes or corrections? Then they can be approved as submitted. First thing on the agenda, if we go back to around, I think, March or April, in response to growing concerns over student enrollment and class size growth, we asked a consulting firm to come out and do a study and give us proposals over possible options to deal with that. Following that, everybody came back to the administration and said, we kind of like option one, but we want to look at it from a couple of different ways. The administration came back with some options about class consolidation and presented that to us, I think, in late May. I think so. And it's been percolating since May throughout the committees. This is your opportunity for a discussion on class size consolidation as an option for the school district. I will open to the table. Okay.
Sure. Long and hard decision, looked at a lot of the information. I first of all had thought of this in terms of grade level realignment as opposed to consolidation. I have to be very honest, I like the way things are laid out now. Valley View, Yorkshire, East York, Indian Rock, the middle school and the high school. I realize that our population, if we believe the study, and we're all having some doubts about the actual study itself, whether we'll have 300 or 500 or 600 more students in the next 10 years, the issue, I think, is that we will have more students, and we will need places to put these students to offer them a safe, healthy environment and to support the academic programs that we want. I kind of like it, for better or for worse, that some of these schools I look at anyway as more of a neighborhood school. Yorkshire, East York, even the high school is here in a neighborhood. Middle school is in a neighborhood. That doesn't mean everybody walks to these schools, or maybe they're not as neighborhoody as you used to think of neighborhood schools. But I kind of like, I like them the way they are. So I guess that was the kind of discussion you wanted tonight, I believe, Dr. Williams, was as opposed to looking at class sizes, just
correct.
How we wanted them, you know. On the other side, if the majority of the people want to look at realigning grade levels, I came up with something a little bit different, that we continue to use all of our buildings meaning we would have to do some expansion and construction at some of these buildings to give us a larger gymnasium, more classrooms, and I feel, as opposed to one big thing, we could add a gymnasium and several classrooms at East York, Indian Rock, full-size gymnasium, never hurt not having another one in the district, that's for sure. And then the classroom, pick some classrooms, because I'm afraid that if we do any real realigning and real changing, we may or may not hit the numbers as they come through, because we have no idea where this population is going to hit us. We don't know if it's going to be in the primary, the elementary, or the high school, and I think we're seeing some growth already this year in different buildings. I think the high school, East York, things like that. So I think we have to be very vigilant in how we do this. I do believe that we have to make a decision. But I thought of another possible scenario, and I kind of like keeping Valley View, if it is decided that we will in fact realign and put all the third grades together and all the fourth grades together, that we could keep Valley View and Yorkshire open, make Indian Rock and East York a 3-4 and then a 5-6. I think the middle school becomes a junior high for 7-8, and then we have the high school up here. It will involve adding some classrooms and what have you at these buildings, but I think it will allow us to address increases in population, and if the time should happen to come that the population again begins to decline, we don't have a lot of big buildings, or we can use these classrooms for other things, or we can use them for the LIU fair share classrooms, assuming they're still doing that, that kind of thing. So I would, kind of look at that. The one big change that I would see as far as a big construction is concerned is up here at the high school, and I know we've talked about numbers and how much money we can spend, and all that is, I started looking at some numbers and I thought, well, we have to decide how we want to do this. At the high school, if we take and get rid of the science wing as it now exists and the doors over and put in a 2- or 3-story new addition, would give us some large collaborative rooms, meeting rooms, and then extra classrooms that I think we're going to need at the high school. Plus, it would upgrade our science labs, which are in real need of some real help, everything from needing the proper kind of tables in those lab rooms to the state-of-the-art things that you need for chemistry and physics and biology to really run these programs we're running. 20 years ago when we did some work with those rooms, we did not great extremes or great lengths to do that. So that's the only place where I could see maybe some large construction. So anyway, I throw those two ideas out, but basically I prefer to keep the buildings aligned to where they are now and work within that structure and do what we might have to do to tweak these buildings to allow for some growth.
Well, I'm on the other side. I feel like consolidating the grades is the wise step to make, and mainly for the reasons that the administration put forward, namely equity. I'd start there, that we need to give our kids, regardless of where they live in the district, the same educational opportunity, and one way to do that is to consolidate the grades. The other is the financial efficiency that was pointed out, and we would have a lot more flexibility in adding and moving faculty members if the grades are consolidated in one place, and if they're done in a more clustered fashion, that doesn't just allow us to move teachers between classes in the same grade, but to also move them up and down as a constraint only by the certifications. So that, I think, gives us maximum flexibility. But more importantly to me, or just as importantly to me, is the equity piece, which I think is critical. There's a perception, I think, that today the so-called neighborhood schools are fundamentally different, east-west. And it's not so much our approach as it is the population itself. There's a demographic difference that's measurable, and I think the best way to ameliorate that is to consolidate the grade levels.
You envision consolidating 3 through 5, 3 through 6, leave kindergarten alone, or?
I'm not so much concerned with the way that's done, John, as when you say leave kindergarten alone, that would mean unconsolidated, correct?
Yeah, correct.
No, I'm talking about full consolidation. I don't think there's a reason why we couldn't compromise to a degree, but then you get into another piece of logistical discussion. Transportation gets factored in, time of day gets factored in, and I'm not saying that that's good, bad, or different, but I think it's a subject that needs a little bit more analysis than just a roundtable discussion. But by and large, I'm looking at true consolidation. And to the extent that we can cluster them and allow that kind of vertical movement among the faculty, even better. In other words, I wouldn't want first graders in one school, second graders in another one, and third graders in yet another one.
I'm kind of impartial to either option. My biggest concern with the consolidation is the transportation issue. You know, and if, for example, kindergarten and first grade, what have you, is over at Yorkshire, that would be a long bus ride for the youngest kids from one end of the district to the other. But on the flip side, I certainly support things that allow for efficiency and allow for more collaboration. And, you know, if that is certainly, as administration is recommending, would be done with consolidation, I wouldn't not be in support of that. So I'm kind of, I could go either way, but I think some of the logistics I would want to see before I, you know, a little 5 or 6 year old on a bus for 40 minutes, if, you know, and I don't know how long it would take, but that would be of a concern to me.
Yeah, I think one of the things that struck me, and I think Mr. Tolman said it the other day, really the way we get excellence is with teachers. So if we can find a way to improve and grow our teacher pool without building shiny new buildings, we're better served. Now, I think if you look at the numbers, I think the building that's least impacted by population growth is this one over here, the high school. Now, that doesn't say the high school doesn't need some work from a you know, care and feeding point of view, but I don't know that I'd say tear it down and build a new one. You know, I'd want to look at that.
Can you build a whole new high school?
No, I'm saying absolutely not that, but
Okay.
If I could follow up in the comment that the excellence of the education is with the
Yeah.
teachers. I would certainly be interested in knowing what the position is of the teachers on this idea. That is, it's going to be the teachers who would be implementing this, it'd be the teachers who are delivering it, it'd be the teachers who are either buying into it or not, and that would be an important consideration for me. Were the concept of realignment presented to the teachers, and then we as a board got feedback that there was a great deal of concern about that from the teachers, that would have a tremendous impact on how I think about it. Or conversely, if there was the idea that this is a very exciting new venture from the point of view of the teachers, that would have a significant impact on me. So for me, there's to this point a missing element for me to be able to come to a determinate view on this. Lacking that information, my default is that we're in a system that has worked so well that my default is for things to remain according to the alignment that we currently have. And then I would need to see, you know, some further information before I would step away from that position.
so to remain where we are, you're advocating for building more buildings.
I don't know that that's an implication.
I think that was the direct response from the consultants is we're out of space. The only way to meet space is through some kind of renovation or change.
I'm sorry.
So the
Yes.
response of consolidation was in response to the building new buildings.
Right,
or-
so there are two separate issues here. One is the realignment of all the grades being together. That's what I'm...
Solve some of the building problems.
Right, I'm speaking to that. Then the idea is, what I heard Ellen say is, we don't need to realign, and then there can be renovations without a new building.
That's not completely accurate.
Okay, so...
If the numbers bear out,
Yeah.
let's stay with that for a minute. If
Right.
the numbers bear out, we will be out of space in 5 years. Now, The realignment was one mechanism to slow that, to give us time to look at the numbers, I believe.
If we knew what grade levels were coming in.
Yeah, well, for what,
Guessing game.
but what we've seen from projections is it's not high school,
Right. Right. It's the lower levels.
lower levels.
The primary upshot of my comment is getting more information from the teachers in one mechanism or another for their views on this. I think that's tremendously important for knowing what the right answer is.
I'm of the opinion that we need to try everything we can not to have to build brand-new buildings. And if consolidation is an option that's going to free up space and give us flexibility and maybe adds 3-4 years, I don't know what the number is, to this, I'm an advocate of looking at the consolidation model. Now, I get the transportation thing on the kindergarten first. I'm the father of a kindergartner, and I have 2 older kids, and I don't want to see them riding the bus for 40 minutes, but there's got to be ways that we can work that lower level grade, whether it's K and 1 go to Valley View and as a center point. I don't know what that answer is. All I'm saying is to go down the path of saddling this district, which is already somewhat constrained from a taxpayer standpoint because we don't have the space to add in more commercial building, isn't something I'm supportive of right now. It's just, it's not. If anything, if we have more people coming in, the last thing we want to do is watch our millage rates and our tax rates jump up. Like, again, look around the district and see what kind of tax increases everybody else is having that have put in new buildings in the last 5 to 10 years. They're not 1%.
And I think the challenge with that is that if we raise our millage to build buildings or renovate, we have restricted our ability to hire the teachers. So we'll be poor in terms of what we can do for that, which concerns me. I think on the other side of the coin, the thing that really scares me, if you go out and look at the studies, places that have gone out to hire a bunch of teachers have discovered that quality drops when you look for large pools. The pool of teachers is just not there right now. So that there's another thing to be concerned about is the availability of teachers. If we all of a sudden wanted to add 20 teachers, we might be challenged to do that in the next couple of years.
I would venture to guess that our odds of finding 20 teachers, we'll find them, especially given what
We'll find them, but I'm not sure it's going to be, the pool is not going to be, how do I want to say this carefully? The pool is not going to be as stellar as what we've been accustomed to.
maybe, but we have the ability to search and choose. We put a building in place. Bank doesn't care what we put in that building. They want their debt payment. One is taking an option off the table. The other one is giving us flexibility to pick and choose. The other being picking and choosing who we hire and who we bring on board versus we saddle this district with debt, and it's assuredly going to increase our tax rates here on an already constrained and demographically and economically changing district. That's why I'd rather look at options like consolidation to push out fixed building costs.
Can I get a point of clarification? Are we talking about consolidation, like grade level realignment with the consideration of closing a building? That being the consolidation, or are we talking about grade level realignment and still utilizing all of our buildings? Because the word consolidation...
I believe it was that, but let me...
It can be either or.
So it's realignment and or consolidation is what we're really talking about.
Right. It could mean closing a building or it could mean closing no buildings.
We're talking about, this discussion point tonight's about grade level realignment.
Yes.
Correct.
Not consolidation.
Correct.
Right. That's where I'm operating from.
Yeah.
I'm confused is this a difference without a distinction? When you say realignment, we're still talking about putting kids in the same grade, in the same building across the district. That, to me, is a consolidation. You want to call it realignment, fine.
It's not a consolidate. They're two different things. One topic at a time, please.
So you think
The only-
putting all
the only
kids in
issue on
same
the
grade
table
together
is-
not a consolidation?
It may be. It may mean we need 2 more buildings. It may mean we need 2 less buildings. The outcome of what that decision makes is not what we're talking about today. We're talking about does the concept of putting all the second graders in the same building, all the third graders in the same building, all the fourth graders in the same building, does that make sense? That is the only thing that we should be talking about tonight.
Yeah, and how that's done is a conversation for another.
Exactly. The
What it's
how,
called, I guess, is off the table.
But you started the conversation, John, along these lines, talking about the options. And Ellen, stuck her neck out first. Option 1 is basically what you're saying, keep grade levels at the same locations.
Or I said, as an alternative, we might
Right.
divide, 3, 4, 5, 6 between the 2 elementary buildings that we
Right.
have now, using all of our current buildings, just consolidating, if you will, all
Right.
the third graders in one place and all the fifth graders.
Understood. I just wanted to make sure. I felt like there was a little gray in there about what we were
There always seems to be a little gray in there.
talking about.
But if you think back, we kind of beat Dr. Williams up after one of the proposals and basically said, no, that's not happening. We are interested in option 1 or some other mechanism. And then the sense became, we're really not that interested in building new buildings. So let's find a way to do that. So we kind of, and that generated 5 or 6 different avenues of discussion. Now what we're trying to do is say, I'll use the word consolidation from a grade level point of view, is that a valid option for this group to consider?
You're talking about building a building, does that include any renovations to
Yes.
buildings? Okay, because I think there's a big difference between building a building and doing renovations, adding a couple classrooms.
But that's not a topic for tonight, is in terms of building a building.
I agree with
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
but that's,
Right.
2 different things, whole building versus.
I think philosophically, consolidating the grade levels, so all first graders are together, all second, whatever that looks like. To me, that if that's a concept that will help us from a capacity standpoint and allows us breathing room and flexibility to think more or have better data to assess whether we need to make renovations or build new buildings or do nothing going forward, that's the option I'm supportive of.
philosophically, you all know I'm opposed to building. I'm basically opposed to the changes to the buildings. But if we came out of this discussion today and we said the realignment of the grades, that consolidation of grades in one place makes sense, and the only way to do that is to build a building, I'm going to say we need to build a building. But that's why we're biting these things one chunk at a time. We have to make these fundamental decisions of whether these concepts make sense, because there's several embedded little concepts that we dance around that until we decide, the picture's not going to be clear. And I would say right now, I'm sure you all know, like, I'm putting my foot down, I'm not going to build anything, but I'm really not. If we come to the conclusion that these things are the right things to do, there will be a few ways to execute it, and maybe none of them are not building. I'm okay with that solution as long as we've thought through clearly those fundamental reasons why we got to that decision. And I don't have a strong opinion on this particular one. I do believe, I believe that the consolidation and the efficiency of the consolidation makes sense. I believe, like Joel stated, the equity of all the kids in a grade level getting the same education is a problem that we should be addressing, and this addresses it very well. There's a lot of positives to doing all the grade level in one building. There are a few negatives. Transportation is a negative. I don't think that's an unsolvable negative. It's just another problem that gets created. But, I will buy into the grade level realignment being probably the right way to go. And the only exception I would probably make there is maybe you don't do that at at the K-1 level, maybe. But it still makes sense. There's a lot of reasons to do it at those levels too. And so, I mean, in general, I'm supportive of the realignment of the grades so that they're consolidated. I think that just efficiency does make sense. Your numbers that you gave us, I might have issues with exactly how we got there, but the concept's right. It is going to, you know, you proved a bigger number than I would have thought it would have been, and I didn't go back and challenge that number, but it would have saved, you know, those numbers say it would save. And I think that is true. And you know, so even if it's one teacher or two, you know, it makes sense to do that. And the equity of the education, the collaboration of those teachers throughout, we're saving a bunch. We're getting much more efficient on that, I believe. So to me, the concept makes sense, and I would support that.
Well, to Steve's point, we haven't been meeting in the cone of silence. These have been public meetings. So my question to you, Tim and Scott, is what do you hear from the faculty?
Well, I just heard today from an administrator who had talked to some of the Valley View teachers when all the kindergarten was there. And the way it was described to him is when that separation happened, they felt like they were going through a divorce, divorcing some of their kindergarten colleague teachers. So it was very traumatic for them to split up. Now, it's a one-time deal for them, and I'm sure they've adapted and come clean on that. But other than that, I don't have any anecdotes or any data to give you on that.
Would it be unreasonable to lean on their association representative to talk to the teachers and give us a... Yeah, I see you hiding back there.
We can get that feedback for you.
John, I agree with the idea that we need more information, and as I've said a number of times, I feel very strongly about not consolidating, not schlepping, you know, the babies across town. I've said that over and over, and I feel strongly about that. Leaving K-1 where they are and consolidating the other grade levels might make sense. I would caution to say that there are certainly opportunities for collaboration across the district, and I think you know, perhaps more effort can be made toward that end. I'm hesitant to agree that because the buildings are divided, one building is getting a better education than another building, because I think our curriculum has been aligned very successfully, and I think you can take a student, you can take a teacher from one side of town, one side of the district to the other, and not miss a beat. I feel strongly about that. I sort of subscribe to the theory, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I'm not sure what the problem is related to the big step of moving, consolidating grades. If we're going to identify a problem, which I think we probably need to do, it's increased enrollment. So that's the problem. I don't think we have a significant problem of one side of town, one side of the district getting an inferior quality of education. I think we're selling ourselves short in that regard. I've also said a number of times the small class size is important to me. While that isn't the topic on the table right now, it plays a role in the thinking in terms of consolidating grades, and this is a way we can save some money. I would like to see us remain focused on the hallmark that this district has had for many years, in that it's, you know, small community schools and small class size. That's just kind of where I am. I sort of remain unconvinced in terms of the fact that it's going to save us a ton of money. Yes, we may need to add some space. I'm not opposed to, temporary classrooms. Now, whether that's the more economical way than doing this option one that the architects came up with about which classrooms, additions and renovations and all, I don't know. I don't have the information to make that call, but over and over and over, the research has shown us that it's the quality of the teacher in the classroom that makes a difference on the kind of education a student gets. It's not the building. It's, not the temporary building that means they're going to get an inferior education to somebody that's in a shiny, glossy building. And that's where I think we need to focus our budget and the expenditure. And if we've got a bubble, a large enrollment coming along, then let's weather the storm, so to speak, and figure out how to do that without, creating a big panic and starting to, make huge changes that in a decade or two will be, more space than we need, perhaps. It's kind of where I am.
So we've kind of heard around the table, what information does the board need in, say, the next 30 days to call the question? What information are you lacking?
I haven't heard Rich's opinion.
All right, I've skipped you, Mr. Robinson. Because you're not wearing it's because you're not wearing paisley.
Well, I want to choose my words carefully because, and listening to my esteemed colleague, Mrs. Schroeder, I would say I am on the exact opposite side on almost every issue down the line. I think consolidation is a viable option. I think it's one that we should consider strongly. I think it's got a number of educational benefits. As I recall the discussion, there are educational benefits that accrue to the consolidation of grade levels. And I think we have to look at that. A lot of times when I hear discussions of the district, I think we're talking about the district as it existed years ago. And in that sense, it's evolved, it's changed, and it's changed dramatically. It's changed dramatically quickly. And it's within the past 10 years, it's not quite the same district that it was when some of our children graduated. It certainly isn't the same district that it was when my wife graduated from here in the 70s. Change is inevitable, and I think what we've asked the administration to do is to help us anticipate some of the changes that are coming. They know it better than we do, and to have that recommendation of consolidation, I think it's one that we should not dismiss lightly. The other thing that I think we keep getting ourselves hung up on is the whole idea of transportation. And I just throw this out as a question. Why would it be so traumatic for a young child to be on a bus for a number of minutes, as opposed to children who are required to walk 1.5 miles to 2 miles to school? Is there a qualitative difference? I don't know the answer to that question.
No.
But, I mean, people are saying, yeah, well, what's the qualitative difference? Are we saying that we're going to be traumatizing a whole generation of children because we required them to ride a bus for X number of minutes? I don't think we could say that with any kind of definitive certainty. And are there ways to use that time on a bus constructively? I mean, and again, that's an open question. I mean, we live in an age with electronic devices that are part of our everyday life, almost every facet of our life. Are we saying that a kindergarten or a first grade student could not board a bus and use that time constructively with an electronic device in the 10, 15, 20-minute ride to school, or 40 minutes, however? I mean, to me, the time keeps snowballing. Before we know it, we're going to be asking first graders to be on a bus for 3.5 hours. I mean, That's not the case. So I would say that consolidation has a lot to recommend it, both economically and educationally. And one of the factors that is first and foremost in my mind is the pool of teachers is dropping. We know that. All we have to do is look at the number of people who are going into education these days. It's a fraction of what it used to be. And that's going to be a factor moving forward. So when we say, well, we'll attract the best teachers, that's an empty phrase right now because we're not convinced. I think there's ample reason to doubt whether we will always be able to attract the best teachers. I mean, I think we had a challenge in lining up a German teacher just, a couple of weeks ago? Yeah. I think that's a portent of things to come. And if we assume that our reputation will be proof against having to go up against that challenge, I think we're kidding ourselves.
Well, I'm not sure what developing the pool from which to draw has really anything to do with the discussion at hand, though.
Consolidation?
Does it?
I think it does.
Fewer teachers.
Yeah.
Oh, fewer teachers. Okay.
From that standpoint, yeah.
Okay, I got you now.
But the other thing, and again, this might be a misplaced element in the discussion. Having a consolidation, I think, gives us the opportunity to concentrate on what we refer to as the suburban way, the esprit de corps, our way of doing things, so that we realize and we know that it's going to be a uniform concept. It's not a uniform concept now. I would argue that there are variations. I'm not saying there are radical variations between East York and Indian Rock, but there are variations. It just stands to reason there are, because we're all human.
Well, and there are going to be variations from one classroom to another. That also stands to reason.
I think the variations will be less pronounced, personally. Now, aren't you glad you called on me?
I am, absolutely. So back to the question, what does the board need in the way of information to call the question? And feedback from the teachers? A more concrete definition by the administration of what we mean by consolidation? Is it 3 through 6? Is it K through whatever? What else?
Are there any districts in the state or in the Northeast or in the continental United States that have gone through?
You're looking at me like I know the answer to this.
It's a I'll look at Dr. Williams, or Dr. Krauser, or Dr. Ketterman, or all the educators, Dr. Monis. Are we aware of any districts that have gone through a similar set of challenges and adopted a response that would be aligned more with consolidation?
My prior district went through something similar, not quite the same, and are very happy to have done it. But it's not exactly apples to apples.
I think if you're looking too at the ability for these teachers to do more collaboration, which you are looking for when you have all your third grade teachers, I think some of that can be accomplished through technology. We have unbridled amounts of technology, which seems to me we ought to be able to get teachers. And I did give you some information at PSB last year about the district that was able to do this and set aside very specific times when all the third grade teachers were available to collaborate, and they were able to do it once a week. Now I agree if they're all in one building, they can do it if they pass in the morning or something like that, but there are ways, to collaborate, so I don't look at, that perhaps, part of it is not, I think we just have to decide if we're going to realign, how we do it, what buildings, and then I guess you have to look at, I keep thinking, okay, we agree that. Now we have to look and see how we're going to do that. I agree, Lois, I like neighborhood schools, and I like the kids where they are now. I think it's really a neat thing. And I like to see our littlest ones left where they are, and maybe we're going to have to. I don't know. I just soon keep everything the way it is and figure out how house these kids and offer the educational spaces that we need and the programs that we think that are necessary. Yes, I think there are some differences, for whatever reasons, between the two sides of the district. That's just the way it's worked out. Some districts could have schools that are closer together that have differences. I don't really know. It just happens. That's the way it has fallen out in York Suburban. And I, too, have a concern about the number of teachers that are going to be available to us in the years to come, high-quality teachers, which is part of the hallmark of Suburban, having high-quality teachers, smaller classes, and we have to get moving on that, because I have heard from some people about the size of some classes at the middle school, which is just not, doesn't allow for the kinds of things that we want to have happen. So, you know, whether that's going to happen, change, I don't know. So, anyway, I guess we just have to figure out if we're going to realign, how are we going to do that? What's that realignment going to look like? I guess I would want to hear some of that from the administration, too.
And to answer your question, I mean, what information do we have to know? I take Mike's point to heart in that the question of realignment is we're taking as an assumption it's financially neutral for the moment. Like, we're not making the argument on finances. We're making the argument, is realignment a good idea? And then your thought is we answer that, and then we look at the financial implications, given an answer to that. So if that's the reasoning, then what is it that else do I need to know? I guess some more concrete thoughts on what are the costs of the busing and transportation. I mean, is there any more clarity on, you say it's not going to be a 3.5-hour bus ride. Well, what would it be? You know, I mean, do we have more information where we can have a concrete sense of the cost of the busing side of it and the transportation side of it? Is there any further way we could quantify or identify the cost of losing the neighborhood school concept? I don't know how that could be quantified, but if there was a way, because that seems a cost. On the one side is the giving up the neighborhood school concept and the increased transportation issues, and then the benefits. Why I put so much emphasis on the teacher input is if the teachers think this is a great idea because they see it as educationally sound, that's tremendously important from my point of view to know that. Or trepidation. Oh, this will create a kind of disruption to the educational model that we've been following. That strikes me as very important to know. So those are the pieces of information that I would that would help me.
So if I've heard that, I asked the administration to come back with some fairly specific proposals around what this looks like. We asked the association what their view is on this, and then in, I don't know, next month, we call the question on whether or not, I'll call it consolidation, is viable, and so that's the only question we're deciding, is whether or not to consolidate. Not anything about how, but if we believe it's viable from an educational quality point of view. Is that fair?
But I think the how is somewhat of the information we want, how grade level.
Well, a proposal specific around what, not necessarily how.
I think we need to get at whether or not this is educationally sound to go down this path.
Might it be different if we realigned in different ways?
I think that clouds the issue.
Okay. I don't agree with you, but I think,
Okay.
you know...
You're not the first person ever to not agree with me.
You know, I would think, you know, you speak realignment and you know, one of the things that perhaps we leave K-1, 2 in place, and then we work with the rest of the grade levels or something like that. That's a difference.
Well, I
Or
will
if you
say...
consider that as realignment.
I will say that the concept of realignment wouldn't necessarily have to be 100% district-wide. I think it's optimal from an instructional standpoint and from an efficiency standpoint. I mean, there's just the downsides, and there have been some that have been mentioned here, and it's not a panacea, but I think the advantages severely outweigh the downsides.
I mean, I think in the perfect world, if you're building a school district and you didn't have one before, you're going to build one building that has all the grades in it. The reason you choose not to do that is influenced by one thing, and it's the other topic we've been talking about. How long does it take to get to school, and what's the transportation cost? So when you live in the city, you build a whole bunch of them, even though they're kind of close together, because transportation's a problem. And you have enough mass to do that. When you live out in the country, say Southern York County. When I went to Southern York County, there were 2 elementary schools. They were not all that far apart. I don't know how many there are now. There's more than 2, because that district is big, and they decided to put one in Shrewsbury because they had lots of kids coming from there. Why send them 30 minutes to Glen Rock or 20 minutes on the bus to Glen Rock? I mean, I had a 30-minute bus ride every day because I was at the edge of the district. But that's what made sense, and it's only those 2 factors. From a delivery of instruction standpoint, you have one building. If the kids just appeared at school, that's what you would do. You might break that down because you had too many kids all in one place. You might go, you can only deal with 1,000 kids in one building, so let's have 2 because we have 2,000. But if they were just showed up, that's all you dealt. You would put them all in one place. Because you have to transport them, you got to consider that. I see only 2 pieces of information that I think would influence my decision one way or the other, and it is the time of the bus ride and the cost of the bus ride. And I said those in the wrong order, because I believe there's significant impact to cost of busing that we will need to address in this plan. I don't think it's a showstopper, but I think it's significant. It's not pennies, because the busing is a problem. The busing right now is a problem. And if we're going to bus them across, it still needs to be not a 40-minute bus ride, so that means the bus has to get there faster. You have to be picking people up closer to their places, because the time it takes them to get to the bus stop is a part of the equation. The kid's got to get up at 6:30 to walk to his bus stop so he can get picked up at 6:45, and then he gets to school at 7:30. He just spent an hour. So that's important. But the costs are pretty important too. Conceptually, I don't need any more information. I mean, I'm supportive of the realignment. The one thing that might matter, though, is how much it's going to cost us to implement it from a transportation standpoint.
Okay, so cost is an
And
issue.
maybe potentially how that of course, cost is an issue.
All right.
But that's the one thing that I think influences, is that transportation cost, I think, is a significant real cost. And the savings that we're talking about, the efficiency we're talking about with the teachers, could be offset by that.
Or severely offset by it.
Right. So that one to me is kind of good play, because that, if the efficiency gets wiped out, if the cost efficiency gets wiped out by busing, well then we're changing for the sake of change.
What if the academic quality improves
If the educational quality improves,
because of the consolidation?
and it was a wash on the money,
What if it wasn't a wash?
What if it wasn't?
if it costs more because
Costs more and quality goes
I would
up.
say no. Then I'm going to go right to Lois Ann's. I'm not sure we actually have a problem. I don't think we really do, and I don't know if this fixes it. It conceptually, theoretically fixes it or improves it, but I don't think we're coming from like we're doing terrible to needing to fix it. We can improve where we're at, I believe. We can improve where we're at by doing it. But that might be if, a couple percentile change, not percentile change. So if it was if it was only a wash in money, it'd be a hard sell for me, because there are change costs. On paper, it's a wash. It's not really a wash, because the change costs and all the other disruption of the flow of what you do is a cost.
So if we are able to get information by next planning, then we'll call the question at following voting.
These are like straw poll votes. I mean, I don't think any of them are binding, because we could have the next conversation and go, well, now that blows it up. But we're pointing,
We'll have to approve a budget,
yeah,
and then
we're
That'll
we're
take care of the whole
pointing
thing.
in the right direction of, if we all believe,
I'm thinking, my own take on this is we need to get off the dime, and this seems like a path to do it.
Yeah.
I reject the notion that we do this without regard to cost. I think that's
Yeah.
straw man that we've accepted, and
I
I'm
agree with
okay
you.
with that. But that will ultimately come in, it will drive this decision at some point. The efficiencies that I think we'll get and that Tim's demonstrated in his earlier analyses, I don't think he made them up from thin air. I think they're real. And to me, that's a very important part of this decision. I want those efficiencies. But I also want the impact on education, which I also believe is positive, and the equity piece, which I think is very real. And that was demonstrable to me. So,
Well, just like we can't ignore money, it can't be the driving force either.
no, it's all part,
Exactly.
go back to the very first discussions. These are all linked.
Exactly.
I'm looking for an educational win and an efficiency win.
Right.
That's what I'm looking for. And I think what we're suggesting is that.
Mr. Evans, could you come back to us by next planning with some input?
And we'll work together to
Thank you.
figure out how best to go about this.
Okay. I think we're done with my part of the talk.
Yeah, it was 45 minutes. That's pretty good. But that was the goal.
Right?
You know what, you're just gonna finish this conversation?
We're going to finish this conversation next time and hopefully come up with Mr. Toman's straw poll at the voting meeting in whatever that is, 6 weeks. Okay? Dr. Williams?
Thank you. Item A, the administration recommends board approval of the confidential administrative disciplinary hearing agreement for student ID 644-396-2141. Following a hearing conducted by board-appointed hearing officer Scott Krauser, the agreement sets forth the details of the recommendation in response to an Act 26 violation. The student will complete a 10-day out-of-school suspension and must adhere to the established safety plan for the remainder of the 2019-20 school year.
Second.
Is there any detail, Dr. Krause, you can provide about that, or no, just as is, okay? Thank you. Questions, comments? Yeah, short roll call vote?
This will be considered a unanimous roll call vote unless I hear votes to the contrary. Hearing none, motion passes.
And tonight, I think we have Dr. Manos and Mrs. Fasik. I'll let them arm wrestle to see who's going to address us first.
Here to tell me I have to go first so that he can, show me up from after that. But I just have a little bit of pictures. I know in engaging students that sometimes pictures speak a whole lot louder than words. So the first 3 weeks, I'm sorry, I'm in your way, sir. The first 3 weeks at the middle school have been up and running. It's been a busy time, and we've been having a lot of fun. So one of the things that's new to our building is we had our student council come in and they chalked the walk for all of our new students coming in so they could have positive messages as they were coming into the two entrances to the building. Mr. Shirey has added new posters. It was what our students are, and it was a Wordle before. Now it talks about all the things that they are and that they are the reason that we're here every day for them. So they see these messages in the hallway and they see them as they're coming up through. This was our picture of the week. I saw this already when you came in, that 7th grade is doing a study with rats and they're looking at their diet, and the kids are absolutely just loving it, from thinking about these little rats with those tails. I haven't gotten myself to touch them yet, but the kids are having a great job and are really hands-on with the experience. We had both of our back-to-school nights, and our CHIPS, which is our peer helpers, were there to greet parents, help them. They were our tour guides, making sure everybody got to where they needed to be, and they're great faces. They're now implemented into classrooms. At the end of the day, help with organization, studying, all the things that they need. They sign up to do that. And our 6th grade has hit to the ground running. With their 3-day boot camp that they came into, they then ran into a news ELA fashion show. So they take newspapers, they create fashions. This little girl here is just absolutely adorable. And then they have someone that has to give a speech to say how they created it, where it would be sold, how you could buy it, and give all the information on it. So public speaking and a little bit of a flair, for lack of better words. And the 6th grade has already went on their first field trip to ski round travel, I'll try it again, ski round travel. To discuss, thanks, Dr. Mills, thanks, to work on their team building, because they are coming from 2 different buildings, to come together and learn how to work together, and that we can essentially be positive and encourage each other, which leads us to our Trojan Takeover. This is our one fundraiser for the entire building, for the year, and how we pay for all of the things that are going on. The PSO is very generous in paying for our field trips and student council, putting new things in. So we've been sending out the parents to make sure that they send us our emails and so that we can send them for pledges, so that we can continue to do the things that we've done. All right, I've blown Dr. Mona, so you show me up here.
Blown it all. You can keep the pictures up. I only have words tonight. I continue to be proud to sit in an audience where you talk about people and that people matter. I actually chose to sing tonight just to praise the staff at Valley View. I'll extend it across the district, although my world right now is Valley View. But if you could only see, some of you know, Lois, and what goes into opening year preparations to get ready to start a year with kids. Back to school nights, daily communications that are going home to parents, weekly newsletters. At our faculty meeting this week, we at Valley View took a deep dive into math. We're taking mathematics very seriously and where we are, and I see us as the foundation. So it's a place where we're starting. We do these things as people to earn trust, and I hope you know and see around the district all that people are putting in to earning the trust of our families, the trust that they're coming to a safe environment where their students are cared for, where there's a medical plan that's sent out to the entire staff, so every staff member knows and is held accountable for that student's needs. We work tirelessly to earn the trust around the district. So when I hear discussion tonight that you put your money and you put your stake in people, I'm proud to work here.
Ms. Mason?
Thank you. As of right now, I only have 2 items that the board will be voting on. The first one has to do with the annual approval that we do for the P card, who has the cards and what the values are that's attached to that. The second one will be about the approval of the budget timeline for the 2021 budget. The draft is attached. This is an accelerated timeline compared to last year. The main reason for that is the primary election is in April rather than May because it's a presidential election, so the PDE has to back everything up in order to meet that election timeline. So if there's any concerns or any thoughts about the budget, please let me know. This will be brought up at Finance next week as well to talk through anything that Finance sees might need to be changed as well. I did find out on Saturday the official notice came out. The base index for this year is 2.6%. With the adjusted index, I expect us to be somewhere around 3%, but we'll know that exact number before the end of this month. Any questions on those items or the informational items, which are about 2 donations? All right, that concludes my report.
Gar.
Hi, I'll move that. I'd like to begin my report by discussing the fall sports teams. So our football team is currently undefeated with some successful wins against York Catholic, Dillon Catholic, and East Pennsboro. For our cross country, both boys and girls are currently 2-0 and have their annual invitational this Saturday. Girls soccer is also currently 2-1 while the boys are undefeated. And on Saturday, August 31st, our boys won the Suburban's tournament while our girls got second, unfortunately, to a loss in the final game against Lancaster Catholic. Golf currently has 4 players expecting to make it to districts, and girls field hockey is unfortunately 0-3, but volleyball is undefeated 2-0 and currently ranked 5th in the state. And on Wednesday, the 4th, so last Wednesday, our girls won their annual Blackout game 3-1 against Dillon Catholic and raised over $5,700 for Brandon's polycystic kidney disease battle. Upcoming, we have the Mini-Thon Committee at the high school starting our very first annual Gold Out for all the sports teams throughout the year to support the Four Diamonds Foundation. Also, the members of the Impact Foundation have just finished backpacking backpacks for our students in need, And just last night, the Link crew at the high school went to a York Revolution game with the new freshmen, just a little fun activity for our upperclassmen leaders. In about a week, the homecoming activities will officially begin. The high school usually has one big theme this year, and this year it is decades. Each day of the week, there will be a spirit day for all the students to dress according to the theme. And then on Thursday the 19th, there will be our usual fun, traditional bonfire parade and court introduction, and the Powder Puff games for all the classes and the faculty, so everyone in the community can attend. On Friday, during the day on the 20th, there will be an annual pep rally for the high schoolers at the school, along with the homecoming game that evening, where the homecoming queen will be announced. After all the fun events, the homecoming dance will take place at the Wise Haven Event Center from 7 to 9:30 p.m. This concludes my report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The committee meeting schedule is posted online, and Mr. Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Posnell. The minutes of June 10th are provided. Consent agenda, you have before you the personnel report, which includes employment, positions, and leave of absence. Would any board members like any of these items considered separately, or are there any questions on any of these items? If not, the chair moves approval of the below-mentioned items, but I believe we have a question from Mrs. Fryer.
Yes, I have two things. Under the leave of absence, what building is this teacher, Emily Barton? It just says elementary teacher. Valley. Okay, just curious. And I'd like, whatever this is, number 2, under positions, number 2, separately. I will be voting against that simply because I don't think that we have gone far enough in creating a certified school nurse position. Should be one in every building. We have heard from our nurses over and over the importance of having a certified school nurse along with their other nursing staff that are available. And I think in our 4 primary buildings, to have them half-time only is not a good thing and something that we need to really work on. So I will be voting against that. That's why I'd like it to be held separately, please.
Very well. So in that case, with the exception of...
VII.
Yeah. We have a motion to approve the other elements in the Personnel Committee report with the exception of II, Section B. Do I have a second?
Second.
Questions, comments? Short.
This will be considered a unanimous roll call vote unless I hear votes to the contrary. Hearing none, motion passes.
Now, Section B, II, approve the recommendation to create a certified school nurse position in place of the current vacant health room assistant position.
So moved.
Second.
Questions, comments?
So, what building is this?
It would most likely be at the elementary level, at the primary level. But that can be restructured.
Where's the vacancy at?
In several buildings. It's a position that's part-time, not part-time, it's a full-time position, half the time in one building, half the time in another. It's going to be the same structure, except it's not going to be a health room assistant, it's going to be a certified school nurse. So the structure doesn't change, but how it's staffed has changed. Or the certification by which it's staffed has changed.
Roll call vote.
Watts?
Yes.
Tony?
Yes.
Sears?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Smollett?
Yes.
Schrader?
Yes.
Posnell?
Yes.
Sanders?
Yes.
Fryrick? No.
And keep going, legislative update.
Excuse me.
Yes,
I need
Mrs.
to
Frye.
I need to do that. I have something from Facilities Committee, if I may, under the committees there. Is that additional committee reports? It's not a real report. There is a facilities meeting on Wednesday afternoon. On the agenda, it is listed, we're trying to make up what we didn't do at the last meeting was take a tour over to the high school and then to East York to see the summer projects. I know that at the last meeting, the last planning meeting, Dr. Furman said if anybody wants to come down and see what was done at East York, they were more than welcome to come. What I'd like to know is if anybody is planning to stay to take those tours, so that we can let Mr. Gerling and Ms. Mason know whether we, how we have to do that. Anybody who's planning to come facilities, planning to stay and go to take these tours, or have you already seen East York, and have you already been to the high school and seen the gym floor and whatever else was done?
I would stay.
Okay? Is anybody else that's going to stay?
I'll stay at that.
Okay. All right, so Ms. Mason, I guess we're on then. Okay? Thank you very much.
Try again, Ms. Robbins.
Actually, I wanted to say in connection with the Personnel Committee that we will be meeting on the 12th of September, this week, Thursday at 5 o'clock, to discuss life, liberty, and many other important issues. So to all of my colleagues, if you're free, we would welcome you. And to members of the public, we would also welcome you too.
While we're on that topic, curriculum, academic standards and curriculum meets at, on Wednesday prior to facilities at 3:30. Be there or be square.
Well, okay. Now legislative update?
You're still on.
Okay.
We'll get there eventually.
As you see, the PA School Boards Association officer elections are underway. We have to vote at the next meeting, I believe. So if you would review the list of candidates, and actually, there is only one candidate per office, with the exception of secretarial position. There are 4 candidates for 3 slots. So if you would review those 4 candidates for those 3 slots, we can take a vote at our next meeting. That concludes the legislative update.
Okay, Ms. Farrar.
Yes, you have in front of you by dawn's early light the highlights of the LIU board meeting of September 3rd, but if that's not right, I'm sure maybe they meet August 3rd. The Joint Operating Committee has not met and will not meet until the end of September. And then for York Adams Academy, I'm very pleased to see that as of Friday, we had all 12 of our slots at the York Adams Academy are filled, and we have a waiting list from here at York Suburban. So I'm very pleased to see that we are availing ourselves of that opportunity for our students. And that completes my report.
Thank you. York County School of Technology.
Yes. As far as enrollment goes, I wanted to share as of the end of August, York Suburban has 60 students enrolled in the full-time program, and I believe we have 7 in the part-time program. Just so you're aware, the part-time program is their senior year that's done through the adult ed program at the School of Technology, and they are at the School of Technology from 1:30 to 3 doing academics, and then oftentimes in the evening, depending on their particular particular purpose, their school. So I just wanted to share that they're making an effort at the School of Technology to go with some part-time programs, and they're slow but sure, but I think it's going to be what some students want. They have a total of 63 enrolled in the part-time flex enrollment. And I'd encourage you, if you haven't done so, to take a look at the mini board report that's given to you. I think it's always enlightening to go through and see the various programs that they have at the School of Technology. I continue to be a fan, and am always interested in knowing the things that are happening over there. So check it out.
Thank you. Ms. Mason, I just skipped right over you.
No report.
I knew that. You have the link to the board meeting schedule here, and this will be your last opportunity for public comment. Yes, please.
Hi, Ann Gray. I have a 4th grader at Indian Rock, and I'm also a substitute teacher in the district. I just wanted to say with regard to the consolidation discussion, I really appreciated all the points made, especially Mr. Scolett's suggestion to get more input from the teachers. And I also encourage you to get input from the administrators who have had to deal with complaints about the buses. The buses are large and very rowdy. These are young children who have a lot of energy, and no, Mr. Robinson, I'm afraid I would have to say there's not much option for that time to be used in a productive way, not without putting some other personnel on the bus. The drivers need to drive. I also wanted to say with regard to the question of hiring more teachers, I'm not sure what what data Mr. Sears is referring to as far as equity and the details of our student population, but I do know that our faculty is not as diverse as our student population, and I actually feel that it would be to our advantage if we were to hire more teachers and in particular try for a greater diversity and in particular hiring an additional bilingual instructor who speaks Spanish. So I understand that the pool is difficult, is challenging right now, but I just wanted to make that comment. Finally, my only other comment about consolidation is that the one thing I didn't hear mentioned is to do with having multiple levels of students in the same school, is the opportunity that the students enjoy to mentor younger students and to look forward to the experiences of older students that are present there in their school. Having mentored the Roadrunner Gazette that is created by the 5th graders in Indian Rock in the last year, obviously the Indian Rock would not have a school newspaper if they didn't have 5th graders, and the whole school benefits from that example. Similarly, my daughter in particular has already been studying violin for a long time, as is an option for young people compared to certain other instruments, and the music teacher has suggested she might go straight into 5th grade symphony orchestra instead of starting with the rest of the 4th graders. That type of opportunity would not be as easy if the 4th and 5th grade were not in the same building. So I just wanted to mention that as a consideration. I know that the 3rd graders really enjoy having the 5th graders visit their classroom, and that the whole school benefits from the 5th grade leadership in helping all of our events go smoothly. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Other? Yeah.
I just wanted to, I'm Ms. Han, I'm the certified school nurse at the middle school in Yorkshire, and today during our faculty meeting, Mr. Shirey had us talking about silver linings, and I thought it was just kind of pertinent to our discussion here tonight. We had to match up with someone. I only have 13 years of experience. I matched up with someone who had basically twice as much experience as I have in education, and we talked about our personal silver linings, and I shared the fact that I had come from a district where we did have a certified school nurse in every building, and the challenges come in here, and we don't have that. But the silver lining is that we're growing, and we're working together as a unified team, and we hope to continue doing that, and we're able to come together and show data what benefit we can bring to the table. So for me, it's a huge silver lining, and I appreciate the vote tonight.
Going once? Thank you. I think we're adjourned.